agreement, you own the consequences visited upon the American people.
This is a situation created by Mike Johnson and his leadership team, who clearly failed to coordinate with President Trump.
All of a sudden, we have an outside influence who believes, I think he is president, and that's President Musk.
We're talking about a possible government shutdown here in Washington. Well, there are parts of this country that have been affected by the storm who are effectively shut down.
We have breaking news on Capitol Hill. Let's go to Lindsay Reiser in Studio 57 with the latest.
The House has failed to pass a measure to fund the government and avert a shutdown. The resolution was backed by President-elect Trump after he derailed a previous version of it that had been negotiated between Republicans and Democrats.
On this vote, the yeas are 174, the nays are 235, one voting present, two-thirds not being in the affirmative. The rules are not suspended and the bill is not passed.
Congress still faces a deadline of Friday at midnight to pass a measure known as a continuing resolution or face a government shutdown. If no bill is passed, it would mean potentially millions of federal employees could be furloughed, federal contractors won't get paid, and certain agencies like the TSA would have to have their employees work without a paycheck, all during the holiday season.
Speaking of the Democratic Party, Democratic National Committee Chair candidate Martin O'Malley says Democrats need to learn from their losses to start winning again. You'll remember O'Malley ran for president back in 2016. His DNC chair platform calls for reconnecting the Democratic Party to, quote, the kitchen table of every American family. That was first reported by CBS News. Hunter Woodall spoke with O'Malley and joins us now. Hunter, thanks for being here. Does O'Malley have a shot?
That's a difficult thing. I mean, you just heard this. The Democratic Party is essentially leaderless right now. So this DNC chair race is really that first chance for Democrats to say, this is the vision we want moving forward. And it's difficult. You know, you see this as a wide open race. Back in 2016, 2017, when they were having this debate after the 2016 presidential election, it was more along ideological lines. You had the more centrist wing. You had the more progressive wing. That's not what we're seeing right now. It's very much this idea of, okay, what can the party do? It's clear amongst Democrats they need a rebrand after these election losses. It's unclear, though, which of these candidates in the chair's race can really deliver that.
Hunter Woodall reporting on the DNC race. Thank you, sir. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's up to be the nominee for Health and Human Services, a longtime Democrat, someone who supports abortion rights. How's that going to play out on Capitol Hill? We'll get more into that issue in the Kennedy nomination coming up next on America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. President-elect Trump's pick for Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., facing a lot of scrutiny on Capitol Hill this week, in part for his support for abortion rights over the years. While campaigning as president as an independent candidate, he said abortion should, quote, be unrestricted up until a certain point. But this week, Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville announced that the former Democrat came to an agreement with Trump that the matter should be left to the states. So what does this all mean for abortion rights in the United States, especially if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is confirmed in come next year, 2025? Shauna Mazel joins us. Thank you so much for being here, Shauna.
Great to be with you, Bob. That's absolutely right. RFK Jr. has been tapped by President-elect Donald Trump to serve to lead HHS. Now, thus far, under the current Biden administration, HHS has really worked to defend access to not only abortion procedures, but the medication. And so questions are swirling, but mostly from Republicans, on just what RFK would do if he is confirmed and pushed through.
You've covered RFK Jr. and abortion rights. How do you see HHS functioning on this front should he be confirmed? What do we know from his campaign, his past statements that would inform us to really understand what could be?
Well, you mentioned his past statements and his campaign. I think we should take a listen to what the Republican senator of Louisiana had to say. This is another Kennedy. Let's play that sound.
I want to talk to Mr. Kennedy about his abortion stand. He's all over his map. All over the map. There's some of his comments could be construed, I think fairly, to suggest that he supports abortion up to the moment of birth. And I don't think any fair-minded American does.
So there you have Senator Kennedy talking about RFK Jr. and saying his abortion position is all over the map. And so that's really a good way to characterize it. If you think back to the Iowa State Fair, I know it seems like a lifetime ago, but you had RFK actually come out and say that he thought that the procedure should be up until 15 weeks, 3 months. He said he would support a federal ban up into that period of gestation. And then around the time this summer, right, when his campaign was out, he was an independent, still out on the trail, he actually said that he supported the procedure with no restrictions. And so that goes up until the moment of birth. But then he was getting a little bit of pushback. So he then walked it back a little bit and said he supports abortion up until fetal viability. Now, we know those are the same standards that came under Roe versus Wade. But what's quite interesting is that he's been up there, he's been on Capitol Hill, and he's told these senators that he would actually be in line with what President-elect Donald Trump would do and what Trump supports. However, one of his statements to Senator Josh Hawley is causing some alarm because he said that he would be open to restricting access to mifepristone. Now, that's the drug that was the center of that Supreme Court case this year, and it's commonly used in most abortions across the country.
Shauna, you're on top of all of this. We really appreciate you stopping by and sharing your reporting. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Meanwhile, Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis has now been removed from Georgia's 2020 election case against President-elect Donald Trump. The state appeals court overturned a trial judge ruling that allowed her to stay on the case. After she had a romantic relationship with attorney Nathan Wade, she hired Wade as a special prosecutor to assist in the investigation into Trump and his allies. The court's majority released a statement saying, in part, quote, "This is the rare case in which disqualification is mandated, and no other remedy will suffice to restore public confidence in the integrity of these proceedings." And you've heard this one before, 2024 unprecedented in American politics. Coming up next, Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett joins us to share his thoughts on the biggest moment and perhaps the biggest issue. You're watching America Decides. This is America Decides' final show for 2024. And while we could probably make a documentary of the best moments in politics this year, here's a look at some of what was top of mind for our team. Take a listen.
I said I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I have done that. I have no regrets.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
I heard pop, 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 pop again. I'm like, those are good gunshots. And since I didn't know what it was.
I revere this office, but I love my country more.
We are about fighting for our future and not letting some people take us back. Because we are not going back.
It is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Our Chief Washington correspondent, esteemed author, and favorite of the America Decides audience, Major Garrett, is here for this final broadcast to help us analyze the year that was in American politics.
Far too generous, Robert. Far too generous.
We need to be more generous to you. You are our favorite colleague here, and you've seen a lot of politics this year and in many years as a political journalist. When you look back at 2024, a turbulent year, to be sure, what stands out to you in terms of the significance, perhaps, of the moment?
So I'll give you that answer in a second, but it will be, when I give that answer to the audience, somewhat jarring. Major, how could you not say the attempted assassination of Donald Trump? Visually, the most iconic moment of this campaign, possibly of the last 50 years in American political life.
I think about that Evan Vucci photo.
Yes. Coming up out of this pile of Secret Service agents, raising a fist, blood on the side of his face, fight, fight, fight. Illustrating, capturing in only the way that Trump knows how to. Not only that moment of peril, but that moment of response. How could that be surpassed? My answer is, for the long stretch of our country, the next forever, the Supreme Court decision on immunity, Trump versus United States, I believe will live with this country longer than any moment or any iconographic photo from this campaign, because it, Robert, and for all of our country's future, defined the limits of the law reaching into the White House, reaching into the presidency. And the Supreme Court said, and John Roberts, we have a graphic on this, wrote the majority opinion, 6-3, this case poses a question of lasting significance. The court knew this. When may a former president be prosecuted for official acts taken during his presidency? Our nation has never before needed an answer. Trump raises so many questions, and this one was to the entire Supreme Court. What are you going to do about my transgressions? What are you going to do about my decision not to voluntarily accept defeat in a fair presidential election? What are you going to do about it? And the Supreme Court said, mostly nothing.
But what was the dissent?
The dissent was, and I'll read it from Sonia Sotomayor, the main takeaway of today's decision is that all a president's official acts defined without regard to motive or intent are entitled to immunity that is at least presumptive and quite possibly absolute. That means future presidents, if they're acting officially, have no legal restraint on them. Their only restraint is what they can achieve through political ratification. That was a central question that Trump's candidacy posed for the country. Is politics bigger than the law? He got an answer in 2024. And because of the Supreme Court decision, he was allowed to sort of characterize the choice in just that way. No, it's not about law. It's about political judgment and political choices. With your vote, you can say whether or not I should be subject to any of these criminal complaints. And the verdict and how it's flowed through ever since is basically no.
Let me push you a bit on this. President-elect Trump will take office on January 20th, 2025. Yes, the Supreme Court ruled on presidential immunity, but doesn't Congress still have a role in oversight? Congress can still impeach a president in the House, have a trial in the Senate. The courts still have power, even if they're giving a president immunity to a certain extent. How do you see those tensions and that oversight in 2025?
The Trump era, and even to a certain degree the Bill Clinton era, showed us the limitations of impeachment. Impeachment is a political tool, and it is now regarded, because it's happened so often in our contemporary history, as a nearly meaningless, only partisan device. We're not going to see a convicted president through an impeachment process, I don't believe, in our lifetimes. We just won't. It's also become kind of a cliched approach to punishing a president, highly politicized. So that's off the table. Official acts now are presumptively immune from any prosecution. I'm not saying presidents are going to be emboldened, even President Trump, but they could be. And if anything has taught us about the presidency in the last 50 years, Robert, it's that presidents of both parties love to expand the reach of that office's power and clout. And the Supreme Court, because of this very tough question that Donald Trump posed before it, has given the presidency, whoever occupies it, latitude that was not stated so clearly before.
A lot to watch in 2025. I would offer the key moment for me as a reporter in 2024, a seismic political crossroads when President Biden decided in July to exit the race. It reminded me of LBJ in 1968. But 2025, presidential immunity will be top of mind for all of us as we cover the new administration. That does it for us today and for this year and for America Decides in 2024. We will be back in January. Happy holidays and Happy New Year to all of you. The Daily Report starts right now.